movie actually ends around the time of, 2015, 2016. And since then, unfortunately, what we've seen happen is the same story repeating itself all over the United States and now all over the world. So hopefully, more communities, when they're finding out that these chemicals are in their water, in their
Right.
soil, that they can at least take some comfort in knowing we've come a long way over the last 20 years and have a lot of information now that people can use to help fix the problem.
I think the thing I recognized was the challenge of getting the EPA to actually formally regulate this chemical. And the evidence that you provided over courses of years that was plain as day in my mind, based on the information. And it took them so long to get there. And I'm just scratching my head. Why did it take so long?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I wrote the book Exposure was, I hear that question a lot. How is this that this is still an ongoing issue? And why is it that we're just now beginning to regulate these chemicals decades after this story came out? And, it's unfortunate. Fortunately, it's the way our regulatory system was set up from the beginning in the 1970s that just led to this incredibly difficult process with unbelievable burdens that are required with different types of proof and evidence and science that are needed to move even the smallest steps forward. And even when we get there, we're finally at the point where we're beginning to regulate some of these chemicals in the US. And we see even when we get there, that's challenged in court, and lawsuits are brought to try to stop it. So it's an incredibly complicated and confused process that hasn't worked very well.
The interesting part about the lack of disclosure of this chemical through the TSCA process at the very beginning, they knew it was toxic and failed to report it. That was like the big, what? Are you kidding me? They had an obligation as a corporate company to do it. They didn't. And I think that was like the big miss from the beginning.
A lot of this global contamination might have been avoided, if some of this had started to be disclosed when it should have, back in the mid 1970s, when TSCA first came out. And these companies had an obligation to report substantial risk information. And, this is one of those situations that what happens when they don't?